undertake only some procedures and not others. So when you're defining an object, even scientifically, you actually don't define the object. What you say is, here's a multidimensional entity. If you approach it in this manner, that's the procedure, right? The methods. If you approach it in this manner, it will manifest that set of traits. But the problem is that there's all sorts of other traits that it could manifest just as well if you treated it a different way. And so the object itself is not something that, it's not something easily reducible to a single set of properties. I was talking to one of my students yesterday. He had a pretty smart thing to say about images. We were talking about deep images, you know, the sorts that you might see in a really high quality museum. So maybe they're, 15th century or 16th century Renaissance masterpieces. They're inexhaustible to some degree, which is why they're in museums and people go look at them, you know, decade after decade. And it's partly because every time you look at them, you're different. You go in 1 week, you look at it, you see something. You go in the next week, you look at it, you see something else. Well, it's partly because you're bringing something entirely different to the situation. And the image is complicated enough to allow it to reflect something new to you, depending on the stance you take in relationship to it. And lots of things are like that. Lots of things are like that. A book you read when you were 16 is going to be an entirely different book when you read it when you're 35. You say, well, the book's the same. It's like, it depends on how you define the book, because it isn't even obvious where the book is exactly. Well, it's on my shelf in the library. It's like, no, that's a chunk of paper that's on your shelf in the library. Where exactly the book is, that's a much more difficult question to consider. So it depends on how you define the book. So without a subject, nothing at all would exist to confront objects and to imagine them as such. True, this implies that every object,